3 years ago, the COVID-19 pandemic swept the world and shut down the nearly $2 trillion global tourism industry. In each year that followed, international travel slowly resumed, but never returned to those record numbers of 2019. But now, a new report by the United Nations World Tourism Organization shows international tourism is on track for a full recovery. The Middle East is leading the charge after logging 15% more arrivals than in 2019. Asia-Pacific countries, however, have seen the weakest rebound. The UNWTO projects international arrivals will be bouncing back to 80 to 95% of pre-pandemic levels this year, but it warns the economic situation in many countries could threaten that recovery. According to UN tourism experts, overcoming worries of high inflation and rising oil prices will be the main factor in boosting international tourism. Russia's attack on Ukraine and other geopolitical tensions also represent downside risks. And to discuss the UNWTO's latest report on tourism levels, joining me now from London is Julia Simpson. She is the president of the World Travel and Tourism Council. Julia, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So UNWTO data shows that the international tourism arrivals are approaching the pre-pandemic levels. Has this rebound arrived sooner or later than previously thought?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your program. I love Turkey. I'm a major fan. And may I just begin by saying that we haven't forgotten the terrible events of the earthquakes that you've suffered. And I know sometimes the media, global media attention moves on, but our hearts and our thoughts are with you. And certainly we represent the private sector. And I know that a lot of hotels opened their doors and a lot of people in that region were very badly affected. So, you know, just to say a big, big hug from the World Travel and Tourism Council.
Thank you. So if we get back to the latest data that's showing international tourism arrivals are approaching the pre-pandemic levels, what do you make of it? I mean, has this rebound arrived sooner or later than previously thought?
Yeah. In fact, it's arrived definitely sooner. Travel and tourism as a business globally was growing for 9 consecutive years before the pandemic. Then, of course, we all had to shut up shop and lots of people stopped visiting and traveling because they weren't allowed to travel. All those restrictions have lifted now. And if you look at the global picture, it used to be a business worth $10 trillion. This year, we expect it to get back to about 9.2 trillion globally. And the little gap that is left is really accounted for by the fact that Chinese travelers have only just started re-entering the market. So Chinese travelers represent about 15% of all spend, all traveling globally. So they're really welcome that, you know, they're coming back and arriving in big numbers. I think also people originally after the pandemic wanted to go to places where they could feel they were out in the great outback, probably distant from people. But as we know in Turkey, people visited wanting to go back to the beaches, wanting to go back to the wonderful cities like Istanbul. You know, people are traveling and the numbers are very strong. I think we're going to be seeing, if you look in Turkey lira, we're talking about a business that's going to be worth about 1.73 trillion.
Okay. So the Middle East has seen the greatest recovery with the tourist arrivals exceeding numbers from 2019. Why has this region become popular for international travelers? What does it offer?
Well, I think, first of all, the region is almost literally in the middle of the world. So it attracts people from the east and from the west. Geographical position is always important. Secondly, during the pandemic, while there were restrictions in place, they were always applied with a degree of common sense and with an eye on the impact on people's jobs and the economy. I mean, for Turkey, for example, travel and tourism, according to WTTC figures, is worth almost 12% contribution to your GDP. So I think it's those two factors. You know, you've opened your doors quickly, and also it's what you can offer. You know, Turkey is marvelous because it's got the culture, it's got the history, it's a large country, it's very welcoming people, fantastic gastronomy, and also the richness of the beautiful coastline.
But Turkey, as you've mentioned, coastline, Julia, as you said, Turkey is famed for its beaches and 5-star resorts near its western and southwestern coasts. Turkey's east, on the other hand, is landlocked and has more extreme weather variations. What do you think tourism agencies do to help make this region more attractive place to visit?
Yes, I think it's always true. Any destination and any country tends to get visitors that are known to go to that country for maybe a couple of major reasons. But what Turkey is very, very good, and I have to say that Minister Nuri Enroy has done a great job at this, trying to look at the broader diversity of what Turkey has to offer. Because people are traveling, they do want to go to beaches, most definitely, but there's also the inquisitive tourist that wants to go inland into Turkey, that wants to visit the parts in the east. And climatically, you know, sometimes it's colder or it's hotter, but you often find that you can, if you like, diversify your visitors throughout the year by seeing different aspects of your country. And also ending, you know, we have backpackers, we have students, we also have people who are very interested in nature, we have people who are in the luxury high end, and running a good marketing campaign to the world to highlight the unknown aspects of Turkey is really the secret to that.
So, Julia, how is a cheaper lira affecting tourists' preferences for Turkey? I mean, which country sends the most tourists to Turkey?
Yes, well, interestingly, the visitors traditionally that are coming now to Turkey, it's Germany is number one. Russia occupies the second spot, quickly followed by UK, Bulgaria, and also, as I said, the Chinese. The Chinese are coming back. You know, the biggest travel and tourism market in the world currently is the USA, but we are predicting over the next 10 years that China will take that crown. So Chinese visitors coming to Turkey are a very important new dynamic.
So how have the war in Ukraine, rising inflation rates and cost of living impacted tourists so far?
Yeah, there are always challenges at any point in history. We are seeing the tragic war in Ukraine. There are rising inflation, which is affecting people. But what's very interesting is latest studies are showing that people want to prioritize travel over buying things. So I think we all spent a long time when we couldn't go out, we couldn't visit other countries. We did buy the running machine or we read lots of books, but now people want to get out and meet people. So despite those challenges, and they are challenges, we are seeing record numbers. I listened to IATA figures just a couple of days ago. 90% of airline capacity is now back. Turkey is going to be one of the countries that's going to exceed its 2019 figures. And if you look at our growth prospects over the next 10 years, in Turkey and globally, travel and tourism is going to be growing at double the rate of gross domestic product, which is really interesting. So
you just said $9.2 trillion is expected to be generated for this year's tourism, but could higher airfares, hotel rates, as well as geopolitical risks slow this momentum?
Well, at the moment, it's not slowing it. We're seeing that every time a new route opens, the airlines are really full. I think people are sometimes combining their business and leisure trips to get full value out of their trips. Pure business travel is also back. So interestingly, despite those high prices, people are choosing to prioritize travel, which is great news for people in our sector. You know, we've got nearly 3 million people employed in Turkey, for example, in travel and tourism, and their livelihoods depend on that business.
So while the Middle East saw strong numbers, the Asia-Pacific region saw the weakest recovery. Why is that?
I think it's just the reason the WTTC figures show Asia Pacific as having the lower numbers is purely because some of the big players there, like China and like Japan, opened later. It is the part of the world that has opened last, if you like, after the pandemic. So its numbers are lagging. But I just saw some very interesting numbers from Trip.com, which is one of the major businesses in China, and they're going to be exceeding their 2019 vaccine numbers this year. So things are, I think what's happening is, even though Asia Pacific has lagged behind, it's going to be picking up at a faster rate than probably anywhere else in the world.
So, Julia, is there also a rebound in the level of tourism jobs? Because we know that the number of people who lost their jobs during the pandemic was around 70 million, which is enormous. So will this tourism and travel sector ever get back to those numbers soon?
Yeah. Most definitely. I mean, in Turkey, we're looking at numbers of about 2.2 million people being employed. And globally, in the next 10 years, we're going to get up to about 450, 460 million people being employed. Because it's interesting, some sectors need fewer people, but the thing about the hospitality and our business, you need human beings. There's a certain amount that can be done by a bot in the background, but when you go to a hotel, when you visit a mall, or you go to the theater, or you eat, you actually need real human beings.
Sure.
So actually, it's really good news, because we're providing great number of jobs. Also, a lot of jobs for women. We employ more women than we do men across the world in our sector, and we have these direct entry jobs, so that people that may not have had a completely formal education can arrive in our business and actually get to the top. There are several CEOs that started very junior positions in our sector. It's very entrepreneurial.
All right, Julia, it was great talking to you. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.